share screen. What time is it now? I'm going to have to go, might have to go a little bit fast to squeeze everything in. See how we go on. It's a shame that Laura's not here because she's going to miss the, anyway. She'll hopefully arrive any second.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll just start the prayers. If you've got your Bhagavad Gita with you, depending on edition, introduction, page 1, I probably will know the prayers. I might close that door. Om Jnanatibrandasya Jnanangana Salakya Kaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Vajanaya Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Krishnam Cha He Krishna Karama Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopisa Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Gorangi Radha Vrindavasari Vishabhani Sukadevi Pranamai Hari Priye Panchakaparascha Vipasnuvaevacha Pathanaya Padanayo Vaishnaveyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sati Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Right, we're going to do interactive exercise. So we're going to do 10th chapter. And then we'll do something practical to understand it. Hopefully that will help. I don't need. Oh, you got it? You got it? Who needs a physical?
Okay, I'll go on.
You got it? Yeah. So I think I did say a link over to the verse. If you need a physical copy.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. So you're on page 503, might I do that edition. So chapter 10, verse 8. Yeah. So just do a little bit of overview if you're, don't know the Bhagavad Gita inside out, not that I know inside out, but and this will hopefully help understanding what the Bhagavad Gita is trying to do. Okay, so 3 parts to the Bhagavad Gita, each in 6 chapters, right? So you have Karma Yoga. Yeah. So the art of action, linking action to God. The art of action, linking action to God. And then you've got the Bhakti Yoga art, the art of devotion. And then you've got Jnana Yoga, the art of knowledge. Yeah. 3 parts of Bhagavad Gita. It's like a sandwich, the middle, meaty bits in the middle. Okay. So the vegetarian sausages in the middle, meaty bit. And then you've got the topics of the Bhagavad Gita. There are not that many topics in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is the soul. There is material energy. How does this world actually work? There's kala, which is time. And there's karma, which is the interactions of the actions of living entities, human beings. Yeah? So those are the 5 topics. Right? So chapter 10 is here. This is chapters 7 to 12. Yeah? Then we've got 13 to 18, and we've got 1 to 6. So we're here, we're in chapter 10, opulence of the absolute. Okay? Now, just read out the verse. Somebody want to do that?
Sure. Aham sabashya pravavo mata savam pravatyate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhavasavam rita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who have perfectly know this, engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their heart.
Right, very good. Okay. Now, there's a reason why this is here at the start of the 8th chapter, because without this verse, the meaty bit of the 10th chapter, doesn't make sense, which is all the different opulence of the absolute. Okay. Now, what you've also got here, so you know, like when you're at university or school, and there's like a book you can buy that cheats the whole course into like 3 pages or something, right? I don't know if you've ever used one of those, sort of help study books, right? So you have in here, which is something called the Purna-Kisora Gita. Do you know what that is? Yeah? No? Okay. So the entire Bhagavad Gita can be summarized in 4 verses, 10.8, 10.9, 10.10, and 10.11. Yeah? So this is the first. That's what we call the kind of Gita within the Gita. You can Google that later. So if you're struggling with the whole thing, you can just really work on those 4 verses for like a month or 2, and then read the whole Bhagavad Gita. And then you get all of it in those 4 verses. Purna-Kisora Bhagavad Gita. So the first verse is 10.1. Okay. So what are we talking about here? All material and spiritual worlds emanate from me. Well, what this means is as follows. So we know how Vedic creationism works. It's the reverse of Christian creationism. Okay. I'll just summarise that quickly. Okay. Just a seat there. Right, so we just did this. This is the summary of Bhagavad Gita. 3 parts of 6 chapters. Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. We're in chapter 10, Opulence of the Absolute. There's 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita: Supreme Personality of Godhead, the soul, material energy, kala, time, and karma. Kala is obviously the invention of Krishna, right? And there's a reason for it. We'll discuss that in a minute. And then if you don't want to read the whole Bhagavad Gita to understand it, if it's too complicated, there's something called the Kata Sloka Gita, which is all of the Bhagavad Gita in 4 slokas: 10.8, 10.9, and 10.11. Right? So that's that. Okay. So this verse 10.8 talks that the wise who know all the material and spiritual worlds, know that everything emanates from me, will worship me with all their heart. Right? So a lot of the verses in Bhagavad Gita, as I said to you, there's some sort of test verses that occur. Right? Like 3.28 it says, Tattva-vid Mahabhavo, Guna Karma Vibhagaho. So those who have knowledge of the absolute truth, they behave like this. Those who are pure devotees, they do this, this, and this, this. Right? And those verses are very interesting to us because they tell us the symptoms of a pure devotee. Right? And that's what we have to aim for. Right? Not all the verses do that. A lot of them are about the other 5 topics. Like, time I am, I'm time, I'm karma, material energy works like this, the soul does this, it's you got in chapter 2, the soul is immortal, doesn't get perished, all that sort of stuff, right? And you've got a lot of stuff about the Supreme, right? But there are litmus tested verses, it's around the Bhagavad Gita, right? Most of them are in the 12th chapter, that tell you what you need to aim for to become a devotee, right? And those are important. So when you're reading it, 1 page at a time on the beach or wherever it is, if you've got a highlighter and you've destroyed many copies like I have, you will kind of go, oh, that's one of those verses that tells me what I need to how to behave in order to become pure devotee. So that's important. And you take a picture on your phone of those and put them in a separate folder or whatever, so you can keep looking at them on the bus, right? So those are important verses. So 10.8 is one of those things. As it says, if you understand this, then you will be X, Y, Z pure devotee, right? So we need to understand what this is. Why is it that those who know that I am all the spiritual material worlds will end up worshipping me with unalloyed devotion? Right? Why is that? Because it sounds a bit like, how do I relate those 2 things together? It's quite difficult. So we know how Vedic creation works, as far as embodied souls are concerned. Right? The Christian theory is, that the material world was created by God for the sinners, whatever. Whereas in Vedic creationism, the material world is created because of the desires of the embodied souls. It's the other way around. Okay? So because we don't want to enjoy with the Lord has to have created the material world. Right? We are his parts. He didn't want to annihilate us and destroy us. He could have done that. But instead he creates a reforming playground for us to play in. Okay? So, when Krishna, all emanations come from Krishna, right? So we know this. Okay, Bhagavad 1.3.28. Right? All emanations come from Krishna. So Krishna first emanates himself as the Karuna dioxide of Vishnu into the Karuna ocean. There he is. Here's the Karuna ocean. Here's Krishna as the Karuna dioxide of Vishnu, and then out of that Vishnu, it's like a Russian doll effect. You open a Russian doll, and another one comes out. Another one comes out. They get smaller and smaller, but actually they look exactly the same. Yeah. So, and then in that one, out of that you get the Bhagavad dioxide Vishnu, which is every universe. So there's trillions and trillions of universes, right? Yeah. And then the Bhagavad dioxide Vishnu comes along, right? And then he basically emanates the final Vishnu, Kisora dioxide Vishnu. Yeah. Yeah. And that is in every subatomic particle. When you did chemistry or physics at school, you remember the atom. Inside the atom, we don't know actually still how the atom works. Why is the electron moves around the nucleus of the atom? Why is there a positive and negative charge there? Why does the electron move around that? It's because Krishna is almost imperceptibly within that as the Kisora dioxide Vishnu. So at every subatomic level, Krishna exists. So there's nothing that's going on in the material world without his knowledge. Right? Now, because we learn at school, we learn a methodology of knowledge called empiricism, right? Which used to, in the 15th century, used to be one of the branches of knowledge, but now it's the only branch of knowledge, which is if I see, I believe. If I can't see, I don't believe it. Yeah? And I'm told to draw inferences of knowledge from several sources. Right? So the way we learn is by, oh, I've seen that, therefore it must exist, or it might exist. Right? But if we haven't seen it, and we don't know it exists, like whatever alien planet out there is, then we speculate maybe or maybe not. Right? But logically, the definition of the truth should not be determinant on whether we can see something or not. So that's an illogical fallacy, right? The truth is only something that I see. That wouldn't make sense as a sentence. Right? That's very limiting. Right? So we've got a problem. That means we've got a mental problem of understanding this stuff. What do you mean he's everywhere and can understand everything at the same time? Because I can't do it. Why can somebody else do it? Right? It's like there's a footballer that played for Sweden. Tall guy, from his name, Abramovich. Yeah, he never believed that Ronaldo was better than him. Right? Because Ronaldo character can't possibly exist, but he was better than him, even though he was a very good footballer. So for us, we are embedded this idea of false ego that are very, very important. So nothing can be better than us. It's within our program, because we're only in the material world because we think we can play God. So what we do over time is we learn the fact that we've got this kind of bad coding. I talked about coding before. We're a software program, right? Our soul is a user, our body is the hardware, and our mind is decoding the software of it. Yeah? User, hardware, software. Right? And we need to reprogramming our software. Right? So 10.8 says, sorry, I'm going a little bit faster because we started late, that basically if you understand that all of this comes from Krishna, right? And this is only 25% of Krishna's external manifestation, right? 75% of it is the spiritual world. And once you know this is what exists, and know that you're in this place, you will get out of here. Because the logical thing to do is, well, why am I here and I'm not in the other place? Right? If you're completely bored, I've removed all the other human beings on this planet right now, and left you with just this knowledge, you'll probably start wondering after a few days of eating berries, that, hang on, I'm here, maybe I should be there, what's this place about? You know, start getting a bit curious about it. You know? So our journey in Bhakti is basically a journey to reverse our position where we've ended up. We're trying to sort of get the qualifications for parole so we can go back, right? Or permanent release rather than parole, I should say. Right? So we're trying to get back to the spiritual world, right? But the spiritual world has a different set of behavioural standards. Right? Like a criminal wants to, comes out of prison and re-offends and kind of goes back to the shop and steals chocolates, right? But we've got to work in this whole cooperation with society to let the criminal out. We've got to believe that the criminal will go back and get a job, pay the taxes, and send his kids to school, all that sort of stuff. Right? We'll play by the rules of society. So we let out of this prison. We need to understand the rules of the other place, so we can get back in it. Right? And then it's our choice whether we want to go back to that world or not. Right? And the most important thing in that world is cooperation. Right? Everything exists for the pleasure of the Lord. Right? It's not about me. I remember as a kid, I hurt my head because some kid threw a car on my head. I was about 5 years old. I was sort of bleeding. And the teacher went, no one's allowed cars anymore in the class. And I went, what about me? I got hit. Maybe I should get out of the car. The teacher started laughing at me. I thought it was so important, maybe I kind of deserved it because I wasn't injured. You know, it's a 5-year-old's way of thinking about the world. But that's the problem we have. We've got this ego problem, the false ego. We've identified with this body, right? And we identify this body because we want to pretend to be Krishna all the time. We love pretending to be Krishna, right? So our aim is to get knowledge, jnana yoga, to the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Our jnana yoga is really, what do I need to do to get back out of it? Right? So 10.8 to 10.11, the entire Gita summarized in 4 verses, indicates to you what you need to learn by reading the Bhagavad Gita to get out of this. Right? And you'll find the same stuff in these kind of litmus tests in the end of chapter 2 and chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? And one of the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita is verse 2.71. Okay? So I'll just tell you what that is. So in the second chapter, which is a summary of the Bhagavad Gita, right? The second chapter is about a series of arguments that Krishna gives to Arjuna for fighting the war. And Arjuna goes, that's not a good enough argument, right? And he doesn't literally say that, but it's a conversation. So that's why Krishna keeps having to come up with more and more clever ideas. And eventually he goes, the real reason you should fight the war is because it's no longer an act of karma, of action, it's an act of bhakti, or knowledge. It's an act of bhakti. You're doing it for me. Right? You're going to fight the war for my pleasure. So verse 2.71, it's the penultimate verse of chapter 2, chapter 2 being the contents of the Bhagavad Gita summarized, says there's a difference between somebody who enjoys for themselves and somebody who enjoys for me in any given moment. Right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of recode our mental software so that we can go, am I doing this for myself, for my false ego, for this body, to enjoy for myself? Am I doing it for Krishna? Because to get out of it, we need to get to this idea of cooperating for God's pleasure, not for our own pleasure. Yeah? Then we get the visa. Some countries get a visa to Israel. It's quite difficult. It's all sorts of pages and pages of things you need to do because it's a war zone. Right? So it's like a visa to go to somewhere like Israel. Imagine getting to North Korea. I mean, it's like, no way you can get in there, right? Not that you want to go to North Korea, but it's a very, very set of technical rules you need to satisfy, right? Do you have enough money? Do you have a literacy test and all this sort of stuff, right? So we're trying to get the level that we need to get our visa out of here, right? So we can live our lives thinking, one day I'll be in the spiritual world, and someone can come along and go, here are the visa requirements, and we go, oh, well, that's interesting, but I don't really want to know the requirements. I just think I'll get there somehow. It's a weird way to plan your travel through life after life after life, right? This journey and so on. It's a weird way to plan it if you're not going to look at the requirements for what you should be doing to get out of it. So that's what we're trying to get on. So before I get onto that, let's just do chapter 10, okay? And chapter 10, just understand chapter 10, the opulence of the absolute, okay? There's nothing in this world that can possibly exist, okay, without Krishna, okay? Without the attributes of that thing existing in Krishna, okay? So if we have the software, which is the mind and thought process, we have the hardware, the body, the physical computer, and we have the user, which is the soul, right? None of that setup can exist without Steve Jobs. Let's say Apple was the only computer company in the world, right? It has to come from Steve Jobs' mind, how all this is shaped, how the software user interface works, how the mouse worked, like he pulled it up from Xerox years ago. Right? So there's a source of it. Right? Now, our job as devotees is to start looking at a world where we look at the computer and go, oh, that little icon over there, that's really cute. I bet Steve Jobs designed that one. And look at the iPhone, look at the new software coming out of the iPhone. Steve Jobs must have designed that. And look at how shiny the back of the iPhone is. Steve Jobs designed that. So we're looking at this world and going, oh, that reminds me of Krishna, that reminds me of Krishna, that reminds me of Krishna. Because there's nothing in here that cannot exist without Krishna having thought of it or having emanated from Krishna. Okay? So if you just stick your hands up in a minute and just think about your famous films, your favourite film star, you're pretending not devotees from America, right? Favourite film star, your favourite sports person, and think about why you like them. Just stick your hand up and offer a name. I've got 400, so I won't put my hand up.
Genuinely struggling to choose.
You're talking about Led Zeppelin, wasn't it? They were talking about the Beatles, wasn't it? Right? Well, you might not like the Beatles.
Do you like the Beatles?
It won't be a Rolling Stone. Okay.
Let's do the Beatles.
So Beatles. It's a white album, I suppose. Someone must have some. God, am I the only guy that lives in the material world here? Oh my God, you know. I mean, you must have seen a messy dribble on YouTube or something, or Muhammad Ali boxed somebody for the old clips and see any of that stuff. When you were a materialist, you know, back in the day. No?
Okay, let's say for sports, someone like Shane Warne, he's famous for his fast spin bowling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where does that come from? Well, what happens in Vrindavan? The boys are always playing infinite different games with each other. Sport doesn't exist here because it doesn't exist in the spiritual world. It can only exist here because it exists in the spiritual world. The idea of playing games and winning and losing. The cowherd boys are playing those games all the time, right? Anything else? Film styles?
Yeah, let's say movie, The Matrix.
Yeah.
And how that's very thought-provoking.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of curiosity, the idea of philosophical learning, that comes from the spiritual world. Krishna, the way Krishna plays with the cowherd boys or the Vrijvasis, you know, there's always a bit of quizzical stuff going on there in the pastimes. You know, so this material world is a reflection of all these attributes. We can talk about Muhammad Ali's speed, or we can talk about, you know when they say when Krishna, I've said this before, when Krishna picks up his flute, right, and the smaller flute, there's 3 different types of flutes, he picks up the smaller flute, and he's about to play it, Brahma actually faints, right? He actually faints because the sound, he knows what's coming with the sound. Because if you imagine every single composer that's ever lived, from Mozart to Beethoven to Czerny to jazz musicians to jazz composers to modern rock stars to Robbie Williams, Elvis Presley, all of that together would go nowhere near, that emanates from Krishna, and would go nowhere near the sound that's about to be created, right? And even Indra turns his head to listen, right? That's how beautiful it is. And we would have no idea about that, right? We can only kind of extrapolate from this verse, like 10.8, everything comes from Krishna, chapter 10. We can only try and extrapolate, wow, what a place this must be, where this one person, this one individual, has all of these things and more in themselves, right? So eventually, when you pick up the Australian or whatever newspaper it is they read here, I don't know, I'm familiar with Australian media, but they go, oh, Shane Warne or whoever it is, Mark Ward's done this, you know. You go, he gets that from Krishna. He's here at 6 or something. And he's Krishna through karma, through previous lives, through good piety. He's got that ability from Krishna, that tendency to do that. That's coming from Krishna. There is nothing here that doesn't come from Krishna, right? And so you can start wandering around and reading the newspapers. You can do materialistic stuff as you do devotional service and go, oh, there's a bit of Krishna there. Look at that banker that's hoarding all that stuff. That's Krishna's attributes of hoarding, which you see in Kavera, the treasure of the demigods. Yeah, all these bankers are sort of hoarding things in banks and doing investment, programs and what have you. Someone ripping people off. This is all actually emanates from Krishna, right? Don't think this separate idea that when you start devotional service, there's something spiritual and something material. No, eventually as a spiritualist, you just see everything as part of Krishna, right? You don't see that segregation. You just see it being misused. You see the misusage of the independence of the living soul. Right? That's what you see in the material world, right? So instead of all that stuff being back as it was in the spiritual world, you're seeing it selfishly being used for selfish pleasure, one's own pleasure, right? So that's why the verse makes sense, because when it says, he who understands, he or she who understands, and we're all she's, of course, because we're all Prakriti, we're all the, I think Krishna is the male, he can only be the Purusa, we're all Prakriti, right? where the minute inferior spiritual energy, material energy, right, the marginal energy. So only Krishna can have those things, right? And as we start to understand that, then we see the verse makes sense, right? Those who understand that everything emanates from Krishna in this world, therefore see Krishna everywhere. You know, and Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, well, they're never lost to me, I'm never lost to them. Because they're seeing me everywhere, all the time. Their thoughts are always absorbed in me. You know, this is in the Chakra-Sutta Gita, the next few verses. Right? They will find relief from birth and death. Because their thoughts are only now re-geared. They've got their visa requirements. You know, let's assume the visa requirements are series of exams, right? Like you're going to Vietnam or North Korea, or whatever it is, and you've got to cook like a North Korean person. You've got to know all the dishes to get the visa, right? So you now have all the knowledge. You're just not in the spiritual world, but you can actually now go home. You passed a North Korean culture test, and you can behave like a North Korean. So you're a North Korean in Adelaide, but you're actually but you're behaving like a North Korean. You're in Adelaide. So you're in the material world, but you're actually behaving like you're in the spiritual world. So these kind of litmus verses are really, really useful for us. Is that too fast? Oh, sorry, I've gone a bit quick. Or is that okay so far? Yeah, feel free to ask any question that I probably won't be able to answer at any time. Right? So, so we're learning these litmus tests, we're learning the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Because Krishna has put Arjuna in Maya. Arjuna doesn't need to be in Maya, he'll fight the war for Krishna. He's put them for our benefit, right? They don't need to kind of have a pause for 45 minutes and have some chamomile tea at the start of the war and go, let's have a chat about spirituality, right? They're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for us, right? So maybe the embodied souls who've been so naughty for so many trillions of births have the opportunity to understand how to get out of it. Right? So that's what this is about. So chapter 10, now you know all of chapter 10, because the rest of chapter 10, after this verse, is really like, if you see the strength of a lion, that comes from me. If you see the Himalayas, the kind of the augustness of the Himalayas and the power, the way they are shaped and the way they stand so prominent, those integral aspects come from me. I am like that. Everything here is coming from me. And that's what chapter 10 is telling you. The opulence of the Absolute. There is no one that's run fast because Krishna has not allowed it. It doesn't happen. Okay, no one breaks the 100 meters record in the world championships or the Olympics without Krishna. It doesn't happen. So let's look at the next verse, which is, I haven't sent the handout out, so forgive me. I couldn't resize the fonts on this. So the next one we're going to look at, just to tie this up a bit, is verse 9.23, so chapter 9, verse 23. I think I did send a link to it. Did I send a link? I think I sent a link. Yeah, I did send a link. So that's on your WhatsApp group. Right. Anyone want to read this? Jackson?
9:23.
9:23.
Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way.
Yeah. Okay. Right. This is the Vaishnava way of understanding other religions. Okay. It's one of the things that attracted me about the Vaishnava school of thought is it doesn't discount any other school of religion, right? And you know from verse 10.8, well, that can't be the case. Everything is a part of Krishna, emanates from Krishna, right? So all these other religions are coming from Krishna. So let's have a look at this thing I used to do for students back in the day. I'll use my hand. Okay, so this is a middle of a wheel. These are spokes. This is all these little triangles, spokes of this wheel, right, are all the different religions of the world. Okay, is like Hinduism, if we call it that, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Christianity. Right? Here's an unbeliever outside the circle. Right? And then you've got lots of people in the middle. Right? You've people in these triangles. And people in the triangles are normally interested in the differences between religions. Hey, my path is the right one, everyone else is wrong. False ego, pretending to be Krishna, I'm the only one. And then you've got the middle bit. As people increase their faith and develop love of God, they stop seeing these differences between their religions. They start seeing it's all part of one thing. Right? That's rare. Certain eclectical Christians will think that way. Certain handful of Jews will think that way. Sorry. And chapter 17.
I have a question on that point. Because
Yeah.
you say that is true, that there are Christians who see that way, but their scripture actually goes against that way of thinking. Like their scripture will claim that it is the only true religion.
Yeah.
So in a sense, those Christians are actually not believing some tenets of their own faith.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about why that is. That's a really good point. Yeah. So we've got these different things now. Krishna in chapter 17 tells us that everything in the material world is under the control, like religions are under control of three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right? And even faith is divided into those. The practice of faith is divided into those things. Right? So you have certain religious practices in different religions, which are based on the mode of passion. I want to enjoy for myself. I want to take control. I want to dominate. Ignorance. I don't care what the religion says. I'm going to interpret it my way. I'll go and blow somebody up. That sort of thing. Mode of goodness. Where that way kind of. I'm trying to help everyone in my religion to improve their faith. So all the religions are practiced in that way. Even Vaishnavism. Most people who practice Bhakti are normally doing modes of nature. They're not transcendental modes. Okay? They're practicing one of the modes of nature. And a lot of their Bhakti sadhana will be in the different modes of nature. Okay? They'll be like doing one thing perfectly well and trying to help others, and at the time they'll be flouting another rule, because we are conditioned. We're all going to be like that, even if we're Swamis. Right? There won't be like, that rule I don't care about. I'm going to do that the way I want to do it. Right? Because we're rebellious, conditioned souls. So we have the modes in us. There's nothing we can do about it. It's our actual material nature. Okay? So we got all this, but Krishna, there's a bit of history behind this. So originally there was one Veda that was chopped into 4 Vedas and thrown all over the world. Right? So actually all these practices actually do come from one source. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, all the Vedas emanate from him, and he's the ultimate purpose of the Vedas. But the thing about this is that a person that's progressing towards a pure love of God, irrespective of the path they choose, right, is making spiritual progress. You cannot discount that. Right? Now, the Vaishnava way to approach this is, Christians will believe in Christ, and they don't have a personal form of the Lord. But after many lives as a Christian, you'll be ready so that when you see the personal form of the Lord, you won't go, that just looks like a person. You won't create that kind of offence. The Krishna's quite careful. He wants you to come back to him. Right? So he's not going to, for most people who are sincere, he's not going to put them in a position where they mess up. Right? They might do little mess ups here and there, but he's trying to put them on the right path. He's seeing how the love for the divine is growing in them. Right? That's why a lot of people who come to our movement came from other faiths, like Judaism and Christianity, even Islam. So we're going to have a holistic view of everything going on in the material world and relate it all back to Krishna. Okay? And then we're going to develop that spiritual vision. Okay? So any questions on that? And the reason why you're born into a family that's a Muslim is because there's certain arrangements of the modes of nature that have to occur because of the previous karma for you to practice faith. Yeah. Now, I've said many, many times, if you're in the temple and someone's suddenly aggressive to you, you just think, well, maybe they were a tiger 17 lives ago, and they're still trying to get over that by chanting. You just let it go. And we have all these different elements of ourselves that we're just trying to deal with our bhakti. Now, bhakti will sweep away all our previous karma. Right, now I'm going to do some technical stuff on bhakti, which hopefully should help you. I was about to leave the house, I was going to use my board, and my child started writing over the board.
There's a cloth over there.
There's that, right? I thought you were going to wait to the end and tell me that. Well, my hands are sort of blackened as well. Now there's a cloth. Right, that's what I'm saying. Right. Okay. do not be freaked out by this. Okay, this is from an actual devotion. It's just something to think about, so that like 10 years from now you can remember it. Like, it's not for you to start to go off and go, oh my God, what is this stuff? You know, better off going to the pub. Only I'm allowed to. Right, okay, let's go back to my. So this is on the Bhakti Shastri course. If you ever do it, you'll do this. And this will just make it a bit easier if you do it. I think sometimes they overload these courses and it's a bit confusing. So, okay. So here we are. Okay. So, effectively, Purna-Kisora tells us that there's 3 types of bhakti, right? In the broadest sense. Right? You have Vaidhi bhakti. I'll go slow because it's new to people. So Vaidhi bhakti, then you have Bhava bhakti. You can have the word yoga after that if you want. Right? And then you have pure love of God, which is very difficult to achieve, right? Prema bhakti, the symptoms of prema bhakti are, I wake up, how can I use my eyes for Krishna? So the first thing someone thinks about when they're prema bhakti. And they're not interested in anything that isn't to do with Krishna. But they're on that last visa requirement to get out of it. But we're not, we know that if we do the devotional practices that Prabhupada set out, we will get to prema bhakti. So therefore we'll get the visa requirement to get out of it. We don't have to worry about that. That's almost like automated, right?
Already there.
Huh?
Already there.
Already there, yeah. Yeah, already there, yeah. And if you admit, it's one of those things, if you admit to it, you're probably not there. But it's one of those litmus tests, but anyway. So just talk about these stages, because I think if you're doing bhakti, if you're practicing any form of bhakti, you need to know, there's no point not having a goal and not knowing where you're going to go, because it's like, you're just going to row around in circles, right? Or sail around in circles. You catch a wind one direction, catch the wind the other direction, and you're not actually going to France, you're actually just running along the English coastline. So Vaidhi bhakti. So you've got, so the first thing that happens in the bhakti process, right, is you probably noticed this, you'll get klasagri, which is relief from material distress, right? And this is the bit we're going to focus on. I'm just going to put the other bits on in a minute. I'm just going to focus on that in a minute. Okay? That's going to focus the rest of the class. So, and I'm going to explain to you why that happens. If you get up and chant like 6 hours, 6 rounds in the morning, or whatever it is, right, and you start doing some of the practices, you're going to get this, and it will make sense to you. And hopefully, once you understand this in the next 20 minutes, you want to do more of it. Okay. Then you've got B, and then you've got auspicious things start to happen. Okay, so this is phase 2 of this phase. Acts occur, right? This will make sense, and then I'm not very good with the Bengali Sanskrit and stuff. Something down. Okay, and then so that is 1. Okay, and every time you get to the next level, the 2 bits of the previous level are already there. They're quite well manifested. Okay, and you've got Bhava Bhakti, and you get pleasure, okay. Transcendental pleasure, right? So it's not sensual pleasure, right? People often confuse, they'll think they're having transcendental pleasure, but it's not. It's sensual, it's mind-based, or it's senses-based, right? It's transcendental to the senses, right? But don't worry about that, okay? So you get transcendental pleasure, B, and then you get, and that's called moksha. You can get this on Google, Lagota. I'll send the summary of it. And then you get, you start getting elements of pure bhakti. Yeah? And then you've got prema bhakti, which is the first sign of prema bhakti, okay, right, it's called you don't want liberation, right, but it really means you've now got a non-reciprocal relationship with God. Okay? So you can't be in prema bhakti if you're asking Krishna for something in return, any given moment, right? If you're in prema bhakti for 1 minute and not for the rest of the day, you're not really in prema bhakti, right? It's always going to be like, give me relief from material distress. So Vaidhi bhakti means spiritual, ritual practices. So you're in this phase of getting rid of material distress. Right? You're not in this like, I don't want anything from the Lord stage. Right? And don't get them confused. Right? Because if you look at yourself very carefully in the last few years, you might notice you'd be sort of dipping in a deep end a little bit and then going back and dipping in the deep, you know, but most of the time you're not comfortable swimming here because you're too conditioned, right? That's the reality. Okay. So let's go, and then the last bit is, you know, you actually attract Krishna, right? You can feel that you're attracting Krishna. Right? And that's very confidential. It's called very confidential. People who have that, they don't talk about it, right? Because it's like a personal, it's your personal through proceeding with Krishna. You don't want to talk about anybody else. Right? Whatever one gopi has with Krishna, you don't talk about with other gopis necessarily. So why do we get freedom from material distress when we start our bhakti practice? And why do we, the more bhakti we do, why do we get more and more freedom from material distress? Well, if we're doing it correctly. Well, the answer to that is you can just answer it if you're a logician by flipping on its head. And the material distress is caused by three things that we do. Right? And bhakti stops those three things and reduces them. Right? By the very fact you're doing bhakti. Right? So the first one is ignorance. Right? So the more ignorant you are, the more material distress you get. If you think there's pleasure in the material world, or you think there might be like 10% pleasure out there, you can do 90% bhakti, 10% I'm going out there for my pleasure. So it's going to cause a little bit of distress, because actually there's no real pleasure out there. Right? When we do like chapter 12, you'll see that even if someone's drinking wine in a bar, they're actually looking for Krishna. A devotee will see that. They're looking for Krishna, looking for pleasure. They're looking for it in a completely wrong place in the wrong way. They're actually trying to find their way back to Krishna. They just don't know that. You know? It's the same as somebody who's been given horse urine to drink in a bar that thinks it's wine. They're just confused. You know? There is some sort of hallucination. Then the next thing that causes material distress is material desires. Yeah? So we'll talk about that just now. Right? If I have a desire that is not related to Krishna, it's a material desire, therefore it creates a karmic reaction. Right? Because that's the rules of the material world that Krishna has set up. Loving you so you eventually get frustrated and get out of here. Right? So the wise, they don't go for verse 5.22, we did that a few weeks ago. The wise know that all material pleasure is momentary, it has a beginning and an end. Whereas transcendental pleasure has no beginning or end, it's continuous. Right? So we don't go for that. And then we have sinful acts, right? So there's vikarma, there's karma, creates positive and good bad reaction. There is akarma, acts which create no karmic reaction. I go out there, dig a hole, I get some money, I give it all to the temple. No reaction, I've given the fruits of my labours away. Right? And there's vikarma, I'm going to go out and kick a kid in the head, because I enjoy it. Right? It's my daily thing to do, because I've got some mental retard disorder or something. Yeah? So that is vikarma, because it's going to create bad reactions. Right? You might start getting in this life, but you might get what's called the seed of the bad reactions, so later on, next life, you might be born with, I don't know, some sort of weird palliative disease or something, God knows what. We don't know. So those things happen, right, are part of the rules of the material world. And the idea about them is that you go, oh, I must have done something in the past, or I did something yesterday, or I'm about to do something, or I have a tendency to do something that's going to create this, right? But because bhakti is so powerful, right, it reduces the amount of times you do this. So what starts happening to people is, even if they're chanting one round a day every day for 10 years, right, they're actually feeling better because they're not getting as many reactions, because that's also absorbing the reactions of previous sins. Right, it's picking them up. The reason it's picking that up is because, I said this to you guys, I think, the Prabhupada has explained that chanting the holy name, the first thing he explained at September 1966, is the holy name is like an avatar of Vishnu, the Hindus, right? It is actually Krishna himself. So what you're doing is when you're chanting the holy name, you've been spending time in sports clubs, bars, playing hockey, playing tennis, standing on your head, doing whatever it is you're doing, you know, and suddenly you're spending 5 minutes a day with Krishna, which is the very purpose of your soul's existence. So you'll actually, the impact of material energy will dissipate immediately. It's a form of austerity. Just chanting, because you're not, you could go, okay, I'm going to go and do a Zoom call with my mate, and we're going to have a beer drinking competition, right? But you're not, you're chanting Hare Krishna. Only I have done beer drinking competitions in the morning, you can tell. But anyway, you're just spending that time as an austerity, okay? You're not sort of, okay? So anybody in this room is doing extraordinarily well because they're not in the material world, right? If you think about it, there are trillions and trillions of beings just in this universe, right? There's only 10 million people in this con, and most of those turn up once a year or something, you know. So if you're in this room, you're listening to Bhagavad Gita class, right, you are basically well on the way to getting your visa requirements getting out of it, right? This is actually the end game of that process. It's not like, oh, I've got to do all this stuff to get to prema. No, you're actually, by chanting, you're going to get prema because you've already started it, right? Now, the question of whether you want to do it in this life or not is down to you. Whether you want to one day wake up and go, you know, Shrishti asked me, how can I chant 16 rounds a day? And I gave you the answer before Christmas. You know, and I think it worked, right? So, you know, once you have that sincerity, no, I'd rather die than not chant 16 rounds. Once that penny drops, you know, verse 10.8, I really understand, I really don't want to be here. Why do I want to get old again and again and again and get ill? I don't want to do that, it's stupid. You know, once that completely drops, then no matter what happens, we're chanting 16 rounds. You know, my wife was yelling at me last year because I had a terrible fever. At 2 in the morning I was in the bath in cold water, chanting. And she said, well, you're going to die, you know, you're really ill, you go to the doctor and you must do this stupid chanting. I went, no, I'd rather die than not chant, right? And she was like, you obviously see a psychiatrist, it could be mad. Right? I don't think you should do that, but that's just, you know, for me, you know, I'd rather die than not do chanting. That's my approach to it, right? Because I don't want to come back here, I don't like this place. Material energy is not my best friend, it's only here to keep me back to spiritual world. Okay? So, if you're starting the process of regularity, which is, even if it's once a week, you're doing a round, right? And a lot of us have started that way. I would not chant for years and years and years because I knew that would lead to quick surrender. I knew that, so I just refused to do it. You know, so I chant really badly, deliberately. So well, I'm kind of doing it, Krishna, but I'm not going to surrender. You know, hell yeah. You know, can't tell me what to do. I'm body to soul, my false ego. Right? But as soon as you kind of that penny drops, that maturity comes. This is my goal now in life, right? It's not accumulating a huge pension. It's not my goal anymore, right? This is the new goal with self-invested pension funds. Everyone's accumulating. No, actually, what matters to me is every day. You know, if someone's serious about weight loss, they do check their weight twice a day, in the morning and evening. Maybe I had too much spaghetti, or too much pizza, or 17 bits of kebab I shouldn't have had, whatever it is that people do, right? But you're monitoring it. If you're serious about something, you monitor your progress. So you want to monitor your progress. You can go and look this up. Nectar of Devotion, you look up Vedi Bhakti, Bhagavad Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, and you kind of print it out, stick it on the toilet or in a wall in the kitchen, and go, where am I? Where am I going? Where am I? You start repeating that to yourself, then you start getting serious about it, right? But if you don't put your visa requirements on your fridge door, a few years later you go, I've only completed one bit of the visa, but I do hope to go there one day for holiday. You know, it's not a very serious traveller does that. Right? So it's really down to us. Now, sadhana helps massively because you get other people sort of slightly criticising and slightly also pushing, and also just generally we need that social group around us to help us, right? Yeah? And as we develop, we'll go from reacting to criticism to wanting criticism. Yeah? And the more we don't want criticism, the more we'll accelerate our progress. Because if you're going to be a professional tennis player, you ideally want a bunch of players to come and watch you, to go, well, you know what, only if you lifted your hand slightly to the right, you'll be able to spin that ball more when you hit it. You know, you want criticism. You know, and that would have been the difference between hitting a line and being a point and not. You know, that's where you want to be in your bhakti mindset. You know, but that comes over time, and it comes quicker than you think it will come if you're consistent in your practice. If that helps. But okay, any questions on this? I won't do the last bit. It's too much. Yeah.
Talking about the criticism part for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand how criticism makes us better.
Yeah.
But you know, if it's not coming from a perspective of knowledge,
Yeah.
of understanding what actually is better.
Yeah.
So that criticism, you know, how should we still take that? You know, if it's not actually teaching us anything, it's actually maybe leading us astray if it's coming from the wrong person.
Right, okay, so the normal standard response to this that you should have is when somebody asks you a question or somebody goes, what are you doing, you know, is how would Krishna want me to respond in this situation? And the second question is, can I respond in a way that helps this person carry on their bhakti journey, even if they just sort of insulted me? Right? Those are two things that should happen through your mind as you progress. So, how do you respond? So sometimes, if it's just criticism with hatred behind it, or envy or jealousy, don't react. Just say, thank you, I'll take that on board. Why? Because the material world, everyone is ill with material fever. They're in a prison, right? And you wouldn't go into a hospital and go, you just yelled at me, but you're fucking mentally ill. And start punching them, right? It's a weird thing to do, right? So everyone here, we have to have, as we grow in our spirituality, our compassion grows, right? So people insult us, we go, oh, you've got material fever, you've got false ego. You don't know what to do. You're ignorant, you haven't read the scripture, right? You don't punch the ill person. Because we're trying to get the standards to get back to Godhead. We want to behave like the spirit people would in the spiritual world. The spiritual world, they wouldn't react. They'd be like, how can I help this person? So that's hard because our schools have taught us from day one to compare and contrast. Our parents have taught us that. What did you get in the exam? What did another person get? What kind of job has this person got? We are totally conditioned to be envious of each other through the material world. Because an entire world of envy and greed out there. Right? So you're now going to decondition your mind to reacting differently. At work, you'll be like, my big problem, I joined ISKCON, right? They were like, people have a problem with sex in ISKCON, how you control sexual impulses and all that stuff. I had a problem with that. I had a problem with violence. I loved violence. And that, not like going around hitting sort of women and children. No, I wanted to be a very military person. The idea of, I was a very good shot as a kid. So the idea of going around the world shooting people for the British Army was very appealing to me. That kind of mundane aggression. And I went to the kind of military kind of boarding school, where a lot of military stuff going on. So I wanted to go around and someone said something to me, I'm like, boom, straight in the stomach with the end of a gun. Right? That was my personality. So now, so you're in the material world, you're behaving like that, and then you are in a place where you've got to sort of go, these are my tendencies from my previous lives. I've got this aggressive tendency, right? I'm going to have to chant the shit out of myself to get rid of it. It took like 20 years. So like, I don't even feel like that any time anymore, right? It says, like I was, someone cut me up in a traffic jam. I couldn't wait to get to the light, so maybe they'll have a fight with me. That's the kind of person I was, Get out of the car, let's get I've had friends like we pull out knives and stuff just because somebody cut them up. I used to hang around with those sort of people. I must have been a loon. I wasn't a loon. I was a loon. But we have to, as we want to progress, bhakti is about compassion for every living entity. That's what I say, you've got to really understand the Bhagavad Gita, you've got to get yourself to the point where you're chanting in parks to grass. Because the grass is a living entity just like you. That's the level of compassion you have to have. We're stuck with the grass all the time. But even the grass needs to go back to Godhead. So it needs to mantra on it. So, I would say that you have to walk away initially because you don't have that level of compassion. That takes time. In Vedic Bhakti, regular Bhakti, it takes a lot of time. So if you're feeling something happening to you, like I used to be like, come on, just punch him in the face. That's what I'd think, right? So I just have to walk away. Because if I was in the temple in London, as I said to you guys, I used to go in there drunk in my early 20s. I used to go in there looking for a fight. I used to go to the temple looking for a fight, and there's one amazing temple president just put up with me because he saw something in me. I don't know what he saw, right? So, you're all saints compared to the kind of stuff I was doing in the temple, you just kind of like, I had to learn to walk away, and then eventually I'll be like, that's very nice, tell me about yourself. How can I help you? Let me help you, do you want me to carry something? And they're insulting me, how can I help you, how can I help you, how can I help you? This is conditioned soul as part of Krishna, how can I help you? So that has to be cultivated by repeating that to yourself, And if you're really violent, you respond like that, you have to really repeat it to yourself. In the same way that if you're really conditioned in the material world and you like drinking, you have to tell yourself, that's why I go to group sessions, right? Because it really works. Like my friend of mine, very good banker, works for a big bank globally, big alcohol problem. Many years we used to go out drinking together in our 20s, and it only worked for him in the group and in constant repetition of don't drink, don't drink. And the same way in Bhakti, it's like don't have sense pleasure, don't have sense pleasure, don't have sense pleasure. But the thing is, Krishna is so powerful because the material energy is under him, and his mantra is Krishna. So the mantra, all the material energy is controlled by the mantra, which is the avatar of Krishna. So just by chanting, you're going to get rid of these bad qualities in yourself. right? And the more you chant, the more they will go. You might have been here for trillions of Earths in the material universe. You might have seen multiple lives of Brahma, you know. And not just days of Brahma, multiple nights of Brahma. You don't know. You know, and you might be, this is obviously your last portion of leaving the material world, because you're now into Bhakti in some way. So, yeah, I know that's not often practical, but the first practical thing is to walk away until your Vedic Bhakti is at the level that you can just go, how can I help you? You know, and you will get there by chanting, because that will change your coding of your mind. It just does. The holy name is so powerful, you know. I never used to say that. I wouldn't say the holy name is so powerful, because maybe I have to chant 50 rounds a day, you know. And eventually one day you kind of, over time you see how powerful it is, because it's changed someone as decrepit and horrendous as myself, you know, and made him even 1% better, maybe, or 0.5% better. So it does work, you know. And I thought that would have been impossible. You know. Any other question? Yeah.
Just to understand this better, so you're looking at 3 different parts of Bhakti.
Yeah, part of Bhakti.
Parts or parts?
Part, P-A-R-T-S, parts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's normally progressive, generally. If there's sincerity, it's progressive. Yeah.
Right.
And sincerity in Bhakti always means consistency, normally. Mainly, yeah.
So it's like we start from one thing and then eventually go into the other, or it's like let's say one person is into Vriddhi Bhakti. So what does, like, if just understanding it, thought, how is the person thinking, what is he doing, what are the actions, and then if the person is in Bhava Bhakti, what thought, word and action there. So is it like 3 different parts, or like just eventually more?
No, it eventually goes from one to the other. I mean, even Prabhupada went through this process, right? So if somebody's, you know, if you go to the Brahmachari ashram in London, where it's a 10 million people city, and you see lots of people under 25, and they read this stuff, and they'll just think they're in one of these things, because they'll just really go, oh, I must be in this, because they don't understand things take process time, because they're not old enough to understand something takes a long time to achieve. You just haven't lived that long on the earth, right? So this is a process, this is a gradual process. Right? So if you look at, like, even Prabhupada's spiritual master, we read a biography of him, you'll see, this is what's so interesting about this, because if you then went off and read a biography of Bhaktivinoda Thakur or one of the acharyas, you'd see the same process through their life happening by reading the biography. You know, how are they changing as a devotee? Why is it he wasn't writing those amazing poems that he wrote in his 70s when he was 25, even though he was doing devotion? Bhakti, you know? There's a difference between Bhaktivinoda Thakur at 25 and one that, he wasn't even a Vaishnava back then. So you think about that, then he became a saint in the Vaishnava movement. So it's very progressive. Bhava Bhakti means feeling for Krishna, right? Like it starts becoming a non-reciprocal a little bit. So it's like, you know, it's not like, now it's time for me to go to a temple. I should go to a temple, I haven't been for a while. It's like, I'd love to go to a temple. It's spontaneous in that sense. Right, so I'll go to, right. Yeah, it's not because, oh, I haven't gone for a couple of weeks. Or, you know, like we're doing a regular activity, by turning up. Like waking up every day and doing japa, that's Vedic Bhakti for almost everyone, right? And eventually you'll get to a point where, you know, if you remember, if I took my kid when he was 8 years old, and I bought him a big Lego set, and I left it in the living room, so play with that when you wake up, he'll wake up at 4 in the morning. 100% guaranteed, right? Because when he goes to sleep, he's thinking, Lego. Right, I'll go make a mess everywhere, put Lego everywhere, and build a Lego thing, right? Now, when we yeah, and it's always stepping on it all the time. Never have kids for that reason, right? As soon as they make Lego legal, everyone can have kids, right? Because otherwise you die of pain. It's, you know, cheap, no, expensive acupuncture actually. Okay. But it's weird. You've got to feel like that. Like a kid waking up to a toy. I'm going to wake up and do 16 rounds, right? Then you're sort of here, back to you, back to you. It's got to be like that. And then you also have the maturity to be honest with yourself, which takes time. Because we're naturally dishonest because we've been here for many, many lifetimes, which is part of our material conditioning, is not to be honest. Yeah, remember the Michi thing I did last year? What do we have? We have, you know, we commit mistakes, illusion, cheating, and then we do what's it called? I always forget. The four deficiencies of an embodied soul. I'll come back to them in a minute. Imperfect senses. Yeah. So we have those. That is part of being a material body. You will have that. That's the rules of the material world. Okay. So if you start understanding, I'm lying to myself. That's the material energy. I'm the soul. I'm lying to myself. And you discount that more and more as you progress. You're going to find it. You find bhakti very easy. If you know what your condition is. If you read the Bhagavad Gita and go, this is what I am. You know, I'm this conditioned soul. That's because the whole chapter 14 on the modes of nature, you can quickly, once you're intellectually honest, go, I'm in the mode of passion. But I was a lawyer in London. You know, my job was to earn money for my law firm by hook or by crook. That was my job. You know, and I'd get a bonus. I'd buy a sports car. That's what I did for my late 20s, early 30s. So I was mostly in the mode of passion. You know, but I did bhakti on the side. So you can go from these different modes and start getting transcendental to the modes. But it's the feeling you have for Krishna, you know. And remember, prema, right, is about non-reciprocal behavior. Right? So somebody in prema bhakti would never say Krishna save me. They'd never say that. You know, Prahlad Maharaj in Canto 7 of Bhagavad, he tells Nrsimhadev, he says, what do you want? Send me to hell. Why? I'm giving you anything you want. Send me to hell because that's where the conditioned souls need me the most. Right? So if you've got that in mind, then you see how you might react to some criticism. If you want to go to hell as a pure devotee wants to go to hell. Doesn't mean you want to go back to the spiritual world. He wants to be the ultimate servant of the servant. Right? So he's going to be able to take a lot of punches. But he's a very pure devotee. He can do that. Yeah. So people go, I can't do book distribution all the time in London because, you know, in London you're going to get drunken people even punching you. That's what happens in the big city, right? Where there's a lot of demoniac behaviour. But if you've got an attitude to Prahlad, it's not a problem to go out in the middle of West End in London where there's a football fight and try and chant Hare Krishna in the middle of it, even if you get beaten up. Right? It's not a problem because I'm not the body and I'm doing this for Krishna. Krishna is the only thing that matters to me. You know? But then when you see these people, you go, now I know I've got to do the work. But it's not that difficult once you do something regularly chanting. Chanting is unbelievably powerful. Right? It's especially like Harinam Sankirtan, which is the yagna for Kali Yuga. Right? If you don't believe in this, get believing in it. You know, it's unbelievable. You're imagining because it's Krishna, and you can't imagine how powerful Krishna is. Like we just said, all the musicians, all the sports stars, and that's the avatar of Krishna. So imagine how powerful the holy name is. Right? It's beyond your conception. Right? So you might think, I'll never be able to do this too much. You're underestimating Krishna. If you're sincere, you're doing it small amount every day. Yeah. Right? Anything else? So back to go, what's the square root of pi? Because that would be too much.
And just to note, perhaps you could call them stages.
Stages, yeah. Stages, yeah. So, but we need to get our Vedic Bhakti right. You know, that's important. Yeah, we need to get the Vedic Bhakti right. And then, if you're here, you don't have a problem with Vedic Bhakti because everything's for Krishna's pleasure. You know, someone says to you, well, you're chanting the wrong way, you're dressed the wrong way, you're doing this or doing that in the temple. You know, it's Krishna's pleasure. I mean, you know, I'll wear a bikini. Let's do it. You know, should give something away there. Anyway, any other questions?
I won't ask.
Don't ask, no, don't ask down there. So, yeah. Don't go on Instagram either. I've got to take it down. Right, okay.
Just today in the morning, I had a conversation with someone, and they were. I was just reading a book, so she started a conversation. And she's a lovely woman. Like, we were just sitting there, and I'm having my tea and some food, and she said, "Oh, if you're so religious, start making comments." Like, and she didn't mean it. Like, I really like that lady, and she started to make comments, and then she started to make. I always see you with something. You always have something. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then she said, "Oh," then I tried to explain her that. Like God is, Krishna is beyond realities, everything, this is how I was trying to explain. But then she said, oh, if you're saying this is all material energy, then I'm also like, what she said, like, if this is created by him,
Yeah.
so we are good. We don't need to do this. She said, if this is created, if you're saying that this is material energy is created by him, that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
that means we are already with Krishna. We don't need to do this work.
Did you say the word Krishna? Did you say the word Krishna?
She said, we don't need to do what you're doing. We don't need to do this because you're saying, because I try to explain that this is a material energy
Yeah.
and we all live in this material energy.
Mm.
She's a lovely woman, she's my friend, but she's just like, oh, you're doing this stupid stuff, but I don't need to do this because I'm already in that energy.
Yeah, you won't
So
believe.
I didn't have a comeback, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, I mean,
that's okay.
normally in those situations, because there are a lot of people who are now in Krishna consciousness starting off behaving like a lady. Because it's not totally offensive, it's more curious. And the way to do it is, if you show them a picture of Krishna, or they say the word Krishna, or you say it, and they're not being offensive in that situation, they've started their spiritual return back to the spiritual world. It may not happen in this lifetime, but the word Krishna, all attractive, is so powerful that, you know, this is going to be a bit crazy to kind of get, but if someone looks at a Bhagavad Gita, right, what is that? Or what are you doing? Why are you being so religious?
Yeah,
Right? There's actually underlying curiosity in that, and that has spiritual value. And it might be the first 15 interactions with you, they're almost offensive, but you might be surprised if you just keep on going for another 2 years when that ends up. Like I know people who are now like doing 24-hour sadhana, like in a temple in the middle of London, where they have to have doorkeepers for security at night, and they started off with literally going, what the hell is this crap? You know, there's all this Krishna stuff, like someone at work or someone gave them a Gita, and they all threw it into a corner and they'd look at it for 2 years or 4 years. Suddenly they pick it up and it's woof. Because Krishna is actually controlling all of these things. She's coming up to you, the super soul's inside. And super soul's inside you, so there's something going on that Krishna might want or wants to start there that you don't know about. Yeah, so you've got to have a bit of Shraddha and Krishna. That's just that kind of, unless it's not like, to hell with you and swearing at you and hell with you go on.
She didn't swear, but she
No,
just said,
but
you're
that's
always doing this, you always have something, you always...
That could easily turn into, okay, I'll read one of these books 8 months from now. It could easily turn into that. You know, she might get lucky, and you might be her first step out of the material world. I'd say most of these interactions can be seen as opportunities, unless they're absolutely like, you know, we had a guy who was obviously mentally nuts and drunk in Edinburgh, and he was taking our leaflets. This is how drunk this guy was. We were doing Harinam on the street, and this guy took all our leaflets and started wiping his arse with them in front of us, in front of like thousands of people walking in the middle of Edinburgh city centre.
Oh my God.
And we were like, if only he could stare at Krishna's face with a bit of like non-offensiveness, that would be fantastic. It doesn't matter if he's doing all that horrible stuff. And we were just looking at him, waiting to see whether something that might happen, he might get some good out of that. You know, he wasn't trying to attack us or anything, so it wasn't like, you know, and we were just watching it and going, okay, it kind of made us laugh. And then he walks off, all the devotees started laughing. It's the funniest thing I've seen. We weren't offended by it. You know, we were trying to find some good angle of good in that. And plus, we were chanting all the time, loudly, singing. And he was getting all of that. You know, and he was staying there making a mess. He would just walked off like everyone else. He wasn't staying there for 15 minutes trying to get us to react to him. So he was getting 15 minutes of listening, Shmarana. It's the first form of devotional service, first step in devotional service, Shmarana, form of devotional service, right? Hearing, so he was getting some purification. Right? So we were like, yeah, he stayed for 15 minutes. He may have been wiping his arse on our leaflets, but, you know, Krishna's mercy is unlimited. Yeah. Someone in the back going, is it alright then if I wipe my arse with some of the leaflets then? It's nothing expected in the UK to happen when you say a story like that. Yeah. Anything? It's more fun in the UK, isn't it, when you get things like that? You know, that's happened in Adelaide. Oh God.
You used to be rough, I was a story.
You got to do more Harinam to get these stories.
We did that. Were you at the Harinam on New Year's Eve when we got surrounded by Muslims?
Oh, yes, we did.
No, up in our faces. And
My goodness.
That's amazing.
we just kept singing
We
louder.
just kept-
Yeah, you never, like in Vedic culture, you never stop a sacrifice. So that's Harinam, that's the yajna. So actually, I've had all sorts of religions come up to me, and I'm just trying to do it as loud as possible so they get purified. You know, doesn't matter what they say, you're too into that, you're too into the kirtan. It doesn't matter what they're doing, you know. Cool.
But we ended up coming on television. That Harinam ended up coming on television.
There you go.
It was just a clip, but we ended up on television. And he was just, there were like 5 guys, and this one guy just stand in the middle, took Sham's, was a scarf, and he was just throwing it around, and he was just trying to be everyone's very close to us. And he was just off, and there was these 2 guys who were just constantly saying something. Allah said this, Allah that, and we were just constantly singing.
Yeah, well,
don't
they're
stop,
singing,
don't stop.
it's weird because if they're saying Allah, Allah, they're singing the name of God. You know, that's not completely offensive. They're just confused, right? So someone like that who could listen to you for 5 or 10 minutes, in 5 years, they might be in the temple. You don't know how powerful this holy name is. Keep saying this. I've seen, the good thing about London is you see these weird combinations of things happening. You know, there's Bhagavad Gita was my aunt's bookshelf. I didn't know anything. I didn't care about the Krishna story nuts. And she was 80 and she made me redo her shelves so she could reach them. And there's one guy who's sort of a friend. And he kind of got this Bhagavad Gita and went home and read it, and then lifelong devotee. Like, weirdest stuff happens, you know. Especially if they've heard the holy name being chanted in Sankirtan and Harinam. It doesn't matter if they go, you know. It's purifying them. It's Krishna. Krishna's actually there physically. Okay. In the spiritual world, we've got this limiting idea of something physical because we've got eyes, and you know. But it's not like that in the spiritual world. Krishna can see with his feet. And these are material limitations that we've put on ourselves to enjoy in this world, right? So there you go. I can't talk about that for ages. I won't do that. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Ooh. No, off to the pub then for a fight, as I say in Yorkshire. Well, thank you guys for coming. Yeah, thank you. We've sort of carried on from where we were sort of going before, but we'll do sort of, if you come again, I'll do a summary session of what we've been doing for the last 6 months, so it's a bit easier. Okay, thanks.
Kirtan Adelaide. Leave a like and subscribe.